the song. Thoughts become action, tell me what's happening. What's your mind wrapped around?
It's located on my K drive under the folder websites, under folder course, and it's called index.html. So it gives me the full path. And the really cool thing about Chrome is I can add a folder to my workspace. So I just right-clicked it here. So you can just click it and select Add Folder to Workspace. And once we do that, so I need to make sure that we specify that folder that I want it to add in. So let's go all the way down to the folder and just click OK. And it's going to ask you to give you access to it. So again, make sure that you don't expose any sensitive information, because now this is going to get communicated through the browser. So I'm going to go ahead and select Allow. Now I can go down to the different folders that I've added here. I can select that index file. So I can close this one down, because now we can work off of this one, and I can go ahead and make an update, save it, refresh it, and I've got my update live. So we're all set up and ready to go now to start typing some HTML code. And of course, if you want to work with your editor, you can work with that as well. So it actually doesn't matter where you're placing your HTML code, because it's going to be the same file. So this is just different ways that we can access the file and type in our HTML code. So in the next lesson, we're going to jump into starting our page template. So this is going to be a default template that we can use over and over again, and we can use that in order to help better structure our HTML code. So that's coming up in the next lesson. In the last lesson, we saw how we can access our newly created HTML file, and we saw how we can start updating the contents of that file in a number of different ways. And within the next few lessons, I'm actually going to be using my Chrome browser in order to update my HTML, because this way we can actually see what's happening here on the live page. So this is going to be a great way to that we don't actually have to flip between the editor and what our HTML code output is going to be. And I'm going to make it slightly bigger here as well, so that we can have a better preview of actually what's being displayed out here. So we see that we've got the full path there. You can also use your editor here, so it doesn't actually matter, because all we're doing is writing to this HTML file. So every good HTML file needs some HTML code. So let's start creating some code. And we saw here when we look at the source code that as the browser is actually rendering this out, it's setting this up within an HTML structure. So we've got this HTML opening, HTML closing, we've got this head opening, head closing, body opening, and body closing. And this is what these are the basics of what HTML is. We've got a series of opening and closing tags, and it's essentially building out a structure. So all of our HTML content, all of our HTML code is going between the two opening and closing HTML tags. We've got a head section. So the head section contains meta information, title, links out to some styling, and so on. So this is where you place all of that information that essentially the browser would be using in order to render out that page content. And then actually the page content would be sitting between body, so between the opening body and closing body tags. So this is the proper HTML structure for this Hello World 2. So let's go ahead and update our code in order to better reflect that. And we're not going to actually see anything different. All we're going to be doing is formatting the HTML tags, adding those in. And one important thing to note here with HTML tags, they're actually not case sensitive. So I can do something like lowercase, I can do uppercase, so that really doesn't matter. But out of good practice, most of the time you're going to see it as lowercase, because this is the best way to format it. So you don't want to have all of these uppercase characters. So stick to the lowercase, even though it doesn't matter what case you're using. Stick to the lowercase when you're writing your HTML code. Just best practices. Also here I'm going to set my body, so wrap it with closing body. So what the idea too is that just keeping in mind, whenever you open up a tag, make sure that you close it. So there we go. So now we've written out our HTML in the same format that our browser is expecting it to look like once it's rendering out some content here in the middle. So now when I refresh it, we actually don't see anything different. If I go into my editor, we see that we've styled it appropriately. And one of the things about editors, and one of the really cool things about editors, is that they've got some additional functionality, so stuff that you're not getting within the browser. And you see that we've got these opening and closing chevrons that can open and close the different opened and closed tags. And this is a better way to kind of give you a quick overview of HTML. So let's just cover off once again what we've covered within this lesson. We know that with HTML tags, we're setting up tags, and within those tags where we've got content. And you notice as well that we've got tags nested in other tags. So the HTML is the parent tag, and this helps the browser understand that to be expecting some HTML content in here. And the first thing it's going to look at is head. So it's going to look through whatever content you've placed within the head section. So if you've got something in here, this is where you've got your head contents, and then next it's going to go to body. So 3 essential pieces, 1 main container and 2 essential parts to an HTML page and to your HTML structure. In the next lesson, we're going to show you how you can add some additional meta information and also how you can add some head information so that the browser actually has something more to consume and to actually better understand what type of HTML document and what it can be expecting to render out. So this is what's coming up in the next lesson. In the previous lesson, we introduced you to HTML tags. We saw that tags have an opening and a closing, content that's nested between those tags. So this content between the tags, this is now considered an element because it's got content in here, and anything within here is part of that element. So that HTML parent element has several other tags nested within it. So it's got some children in here, so it's got the head, it's got the body, and this is the default structure of any HTML page. And now let's add some more specifics into the content. So this is actually not going to be something that gets consumed by the user, but this is actually meant to help the browser better understand what we want to output and what type of content it can actually be expecting. So typically within a web page, you need to add doc type. And doc type helps specify what type of document it is. Now I know that we know that it's an HTML document by that extension, but also, doc type can specify what version of HTML the browser should be expecting when it's rendering this out. And when we specify doc type HTML, this is the latest HTML5 document type. So basically, this is just a hidden message to the browser when it reads the file to say, okay, I know what I should be expecting here. I'm expecting HTML5 content. So next we're going to go into the head section, and a lot of times you're going to see that you've got this type of tree structure where you've got this indent, where you've got nested tags are indented between the parent tags. And so this is done for readability. So whenever we've got a bunch of content here where we're opening and closing the tags, we want to nest that content in here. And this is, again, for readability, makes it a lot more readable and easier to digest, especially if you've got a lot of HTML code so that you can quickly look it over and say, okay, well, this is the head, here's the open, here's the close. So we've got it on that same kind of line here. So we know that any one of these are opening and closing. These are along the same lines that we can expect a closing body when we've got the opening body on that line. So going back into the head, there's also some meta information that I did mention. And meta information, again, helps the browser better understand what to expect, what type of output to expect. So we know that can be different character sets. So because HTML code is universal, we know that sometimes we're not writing English characters, and this is where you can specify what type of character set the web page should be expecting on the output. So meta information, we can also include things like a page description, we can include keywords, author, and so on. So you'll see that some of this stuff commonly gets included within web pages when we look at this one over here. So we've got our meta character set, UTF-8. It's also specifying a viewport. So this is for mobile devices to make your web page more flexible and responsive on different sizes. We also see that we've got all of these meta properties. So all of this information, this is meta information to help with social media tracking. So when we're sharing the page and Facebook or Twitter sees the web page, they can pull out this information, the contents of the page, really easily. So that's why all of this stuff is included. So it knows it looks like quite a lot of information, but essentially it's repetitive, and it's essentially helping guide along any applications that might be looking at your web page. And we also see that we're linking out to external files, some source files, and so on. And that's the bulk of what's contained within most of the head of any web page. And we also see one more here where we've got title. And so title is another thing that's really important to include within every website. So notice up here in the top left-hand corner, my tab just has the file name. And it's doing that because we actually haven't set a title. So I'm going to give it a title of Learn HTML, and we're going to close that off and save it. And now when I refresh it, watch what happens up here in the tab. We see that now we've got Learn HTML. So although I know I said that the head contents, it's not going to be visible by the user, the title is the only exception here because the title is also used within the meta information. That's why it sits in the head, and that's why we are able to see it because it's a title. You can also see it when search engines are indexing your file. A lot of times they're going to set it up and use that title in order to represent that page. So for SEO purposes, title is also really, really important. Those of you that aren't familiar with SEO, SEO is search engine optimization, and essentially this is the practice of trying to get your web pages to rank better in search engines. So title, super important for SEO. Make sure that your title is meaningful, makes sense with the rest of the content of your web page. Don't just name the title something generic. Make sure that it's relevant to the content of the web page. And next, we're going to look at body. So essentially, we've already typed out some body content here, and we see that we've got our hello world. So this is what's getting rendered out. So in the next lesson, we're going to jump into content that can get rendered out into the body. So this is going to be that visible content for your users in order for those users to consume that content when they visit your website. And that's where things are going to start getting really interesting because we're actually going to change what's getting output on the page. So that's coming up in the next lesson. In this lesson, we're going to talk about headings. So every good web page, you're going to see that when you go to any website, we've got page structure. So not all of the content looks the same. We've got some words that are larger, some words that are bolded, and just some that actually stand out more than other text. So you see on any web page, we've got a variety of content, and it's structured in a number of different ways in order to better break that content apart so it's more consumable for anyone visiting the website. So we see even here there's uses of images and so on. And I'm going to be showing you all of this and how to add in images as we progress through the course. But the first thing that I wanted to show you is how to make heading and heading tags. So heading tags in HTML, there's actually going to be 6 different sizes of headings, and headings are used in order to define important parts of your web page. And also, headings are really important for SEO. And the reason being, so if we look at some content here, and we've got some more content here, just down below, and then we've got hello world again, and let's just save that and refresh it. So what content actually jumps out at you when you look at the web page? You see that hello world jumps out at you. It's actually differentiated from the rest of the text, and we know that this is actually important. So this might represent what kind of content is actually below it. This also might represent the web page content and so on. So the idea here is that you want to highlight important content within your web pages. And also, again, going back to SEO, headings are super important for SEO purposes. And the reason is that SEO, so search engines, are going to be going and they're going to reading through all of your content, and they're going to read through, and once they hit these H1s, they're going to know that these H1s